This video is brought to you by Manscaped. Hey guys, Jay here. Welcome to Eons of Battle. Games Workshop has been producing miniatures for Warhammer 40,000 for 35 years now. In that time, they've created a very strong catalog of miniatures with maybe a couple of oopsies along the way. And what better way to celebrate that than to look at 5 awesome kits, the best kits in my opinion that Games Workshop has made, and take a look at the 5 worst. Not to just rag on them, but just to analyze what makes a really good Games Workshop model. First up on the great miniatures list is the Adeptus Sororitas Battle Sisters. These models, in addition to being the most gorgeous models that Games Workshop has ever made in my opinion, I would say were the perfection of the Games Workshop hybrid kits. A hybrid between monopose and multi-part plastic. Obviously, everybody likes multi-part plastic. It gives the modeler options on how exactly you want to pose and have your miniatures look, but it does lead to fairly static-looking models with fewer options, or fewer options that look really, really good. Games Workshop's hybrid kits have the legs and torsos attached so that the pose is correct, and then they have the arms and heads fit on any of the available bodies. This means that you can have perfect flowing robes and cloaks, while also giving modelers the opportunity to change the models however they want to fit their needs. I think with the Battle Sisters box, you could buy any number of these boxes. You could have 100 Battle Sisters in your army, and it would still allow each and every single one to be slightly unique. I think that these new hybrid kits are far better than the classic multi-part plastic kit because I often search on eBay, and I very rarely buy previously assembled models because people generally do a bad job. When you take a Space Marine and you glue him just 2 degrees up because the kit allows you to with that ball joint in the torso, it'll often ruin the posing and the look of that miniature. But if you use these new hybrid kits and you just follow the instructions at least most of the way with some wiggle room in the arms and heads, you almost always get really, really good looking models. And I think the Battle Sisters, I don't know if they were the first, but I think that they were the best, and we have seen the idea of the Battle Sisters carried on in some of the newer products like the Leagues of Votann. I really, really like this new design idea with Games Workshop, and I hope that they run with it. And speaking of modularity, coming in at number 2, I would say the Redemptor Dreadnought is one of the greatest kits Games Workshop has ever made. The Redemptor Dreadnought is a fabulous kit, maybe a little pot-bellied for my taste, but I have put together 2 of these suckers and they are phenomenally fun to build. Whoever designed this kit for Games Workshop, I think took a lot of inspiration from Gundam kits. This guy is 100% modular. Every joint, every finger, every torso, every wrist and ankle is completely customizable to the hobbyist's delight. And it's great. You can do anything with this. You can pose in any way you want. The hydraulic pistons in his legs can move up and down depending on how you want to pose those legs. It is wonderful. Both of my Redemptor Dreadnoughts are kind of walking along uneven terrain, and I am super able to do that because of the modularity offered in this kit. I would love to see Games Workshop take this level of modularity and bring it into all of their vehicles. You definitely see this on the Redemptor Dreadnought and the Invictor Tactical Warsuit, which is essentially the same model with a few modifications, but it just makes it so much fun to build. And it makes perfect sense when you have so much more room on a large vehicle. I mean, if you made a Battle Sister superposable, that would mean so many tiny microscopic joints, but on a vehicle this big, there is plenty of room, and so absolutely no reason to have any part of this be strictly monopose. We even see that on models like the Imperial Knight, a great looking model, but every single person out there has an Imperial Knight with the exact same leg pose, because that kit it has some modularity to it, but it also has some monopose stuff going on, and the Redemptor Dreadnought is just so good. Although, speaking of excellent modular dreadnoughts, the next one on my list is the Leviathan Dreadnought. This kit is just as good as the Redemptor Dreadnought, but one interesting fact about this model for years and years and years was only available as a resin model from Forge World. Now, with a lot of the kits for Horus Heresy coming to Games Workshop proper, this model got a refresh in plastic, and I think that this is the kit that proves Games Workshop is a million times better than Forge World, and Forge World should go away. Because this model, if you buy the Close Combat Dreadnought, and then you buy the upgrade sprue for the Leviathan Dreadnought locked and loaded, it comes with 2 pairs of every single arm option available to this unit. So for $107, which is too much, you get every possible option. If you were to buy this model from Forge World and you bought every single arm option available, it would cost $330 because Forge World sold each gun for $25 separately. You bought the body for $91.50, and then you had to purchase the arms that you wanted. And this model is very large and perfect for magnetization, so if you want lots of different arm options so that you can have a little bit of variety in your games, you'd be spending hundreds of dollars. And so the new Games Workshop plastic, which is better in every way because it's plastic, is also far, far cheaper. Back in 2004, when Forge World started, resin was way better than plastic, and so Forge World made a lot of sense. You bought your cheap plastics from Games Workshop, but if you really wanted something cool, something nice, a flagship model, maybe a Hierophant Bio Titan or a Mourngull for your Age of Sigmar army, it would have been Warhammer Fantasy at the time, you would go to Forge World. But now, plastic is so much better than resin. Why on earth would anybody deal with Forge World resin when plastic is better in every single way? So I think the Leviathan Dreadnought is the final nail in the coffin for Forge World, and it should just go away. Maybe leave Forge World to be the Titans, the big giant things that Games Workshop doesn't sell tons of, and let Games Workshop do all of the products for the actual miniature games that people play. But enough dunking on Forge World, let's take a look at the Gene Stealer Cult Aberrants. These models are wonderful for 2 reasons. Number 1, they just look phenomenal. They are the reason that I have a Gene Stealer Cult army. But these models are modular in a different way than the Sisters of Battle. They are essentially monoposed. You can only build each sculpt one way, and they're a historically really difficult thing to make modular. I mean, if you take a look at like the Catachan Jungle Fighters, who have, some of them have bare torsos, or you can see a little bit of their arm, and then a flat hole where you're meant to glue on the next arm, and it never quite looks right. These guys are naked and muscular. 2 things that are really, really difficult to pull off modularity, but Games Workshop was actually able to do it. This box comes with 5 aberrants, but it actually has essentially 10 sculpts in the box. Hidden inside of those muscles and those pieces of carapace is the connection point between the arms and the torsos. And so every single aberrant can be built 2 ways, either with the mining hammers or the mining picks. And it completely changes the look of the model which ones you glue on. Some of them are swinging that hammer way up in the air, but if you do the mining pick, there's a whole new arm that attaches in a different way, using the exact same connection points. This basically, they took the model, a monopose model, and then they very carefully carved out sections of it. And it's a really, really interesting way to do modularity, and to hide that modularity inside of essentially monopose models. These models sort of have to be monoposed for them to look as good as they do, but carefully carving into them and then having swappable options means that out of this one box of 5 dudes, you get 10 very unique sculpts. And because this is an elite choice for the Gene Stealer Cult, having the option for 10 unique sculpts is pretty much perfect because very few people are going to have more than 10 aberrants in their army. A little bit because the rules for them are really bad, but also just because they're an elite choice and you don't need that many bodies. And so I think that the aberrants were perfectly engineered to give you the best of both worlds, to give you all of the possible poses and options that you need, while also having phenomenally well sculpted models. But getting away from filthy Xenos and back to the Imperium, I would say Primaris Space Marines are the shining example of what a Space Marine kit should be. The new shiny Primaris Space Marines debuted in Warhammer 40,000's 8th edition, and I think they absolutely rock. Fixing all of the previous proportion and weirdness of classic Space Marines, these guys are wonderful. They're loud, they're proud, they're the height that Space Marines probably always should have been. Similarly to the Sisters of Battle, these guys are a hybrid kit. Their legs and torsos are attached to give you a rock-solid, quality pose, but all of the arms fit on all of the torsos, so you still have that room for creativity. Also, in keeping with the classic style of Space Marines, the shoulder pads, helmets, and backpacks are all completely interchangeable with any other Primaris Space Marine in the range, or with any classic Space Marine, meaning that you can take all of those fun details that you like from any of your Space Marine chapters and apply them to your Primaris Intercessors to make them super unique. I think the new Primaris intercessors are what all Space Marines should be measured against, which is not very good for classic Space Marines because they measure up a lot shorter. Games Workshop models have been slowly increasing in size, and I think Games Workshop has finally gotten the scale that they like, and so all of the current kits that are coming out are actually in this magical 28mm heroic scale that Games Workshop has always said that their models exist in. But now, a Primaris Space Marine actually is how big a Space Marine should be next to a normal human being or an Eldar or an Orc. But you know what's just as big? Manscaped. Manscaped is a set of tools and products to help you shave your squats. We all know what I'm talking about. Squats. They sent us the all-in-one Perfect Package 4.0 to take a look at. Inside is their Crop Reviver and Crop Preserver, a deodorant to use on your squats after a shower, and a squat toner with aloe vera for a quick refresh. Digging further into the stylish packaging, we also found some high-quality undies and a rugged bag to hold it all. But the piece de resistance has to be the Lawnmower 4.0. If you have hairy squats, you need this. Let's be honest, most of our squats look a little something like this. Yuck. And with the Lawnmower 4.0, even the hairiest squats can get a good shave. It features a waterproof body, wireless charging, and ultra-bright light, and replaceable ceramic blades with skin-safe technology that operates at 7,000 RPM. Just look at that squat. Immaculate. Manscaped makes the perfect tool to shave your squats. Follow the link in the description below to get 20% off, free shipping, and 2 free gifts when you use the code EOB20 at checkout. Let's all make our squats a little less hairy. That was 5 miniatures that I think Games Workshop has knocked out of the park, but let's take a look at 5 that are maybe so-so to get a better idea of exactly what makes a great Games Workshop model. And first on that list, Primaris Space Marines. Yes, it's a lame gag, but I think it totally fits. Primaris Space Marines aren't just awesome, but they do introduce a few problems, I would say, for the range. There's only 5 poses, which is pretty lame. You get a lot of mileage out of those 5 poses. I think I have 30 intercessors, and they all look pretty unique, especially with the arms and heads glued on at different angles. But these are Space Marines. I feel like there should be at least 10 unique leg poses. The Battle Sisters have 10 unique leg poses, and I think that is why those models are able to be amassed so much and still look so good. Where 5, no matter how good those 5 poses are, they're always going to be lacking when you have tons and tons of Space Marines. Another thing Games Workshop tried out with the Primaris Space Marines was having weapon options on the rank and file standard Space Marine. Their guns have 3 options: the sniperish one, the shooty-ish one, and the in-between the sniper and the shooty. And so you glue on either a scope, a small scope, or a drum magazine to your Space Marines, and I think that has introduced a little bit of problems. I looked at the rules for Primaris Space Marines, and I glued on the medium gun, the one that's decent at close combat and from far away. And I don't think it actually looks as good as the drum magazine. And I don't think that tiny little bit does enough to change the overall look of the model. And so if I was going to get more Primaris Space Marines, I would probably just glue on whatever one of those weapon options I like the look of for that specific model. I think what Games Workshop should have done is maybe made it a rule that you can use these different guns. Like you just say at the start of the game, I'm going with the auto bolt rifles for this squad, but the actual models are just equipped with whatever looks most interesting. Because each individual pose looks a little bit better with these different bolter options. Sometimes a guy pointing his gun might look better as a sniper, where a guy reloading might look better as one of the Space Marines holding a drum magazine. And so I think if Games Workshop was coming out with Primaris Space Marines now, I think we would actually see something a little bit different to what we were getting. But considering that it is still a really good kit, I don't expect them to be making any changes anytime soon. Next up on the list of models I think Games Workshop could have done better, the new Chaos Cultists. Games Workshop has never actually had a great way to get Chaos Cultists. Tons and tons of people got them in the old Dark Vengeance box, and then they sold a 5-pack of Cultists for a long while, just taking 5 of those models from the Dark Vengeance sprue. And then there was the Cult of the Abyss box that came with a confusing 8 Cultists, but now you can buy 10 Cultists. The poses look great, everything looks phenomenal about them. The only problem is they are all monopose. When you buy this Chaos Cultist box for $45, you are getting a single sprue. And that's pretty lame. Usually Games Workshop models at least contain 2 sprues because there's weapon options, there's posability options, there's just things to do with these models, but these guys are completely monopose. 1 sprue, 10 guys, It doesn't really matter how great those 10 guys look if you need 30 or 60 or 100 for your army and there's only 10 sculpts available. It kinda leaves a bad taste in the mouth, it's just not that good. And historically, when Games Workshop shoves lots of monopose things onto a frame, it's because they're kind of giving you a deal. We saw this with things like the Sisters of Battle Army box, where they created monopose versions of the Sisters of Battle so that they could give you a lot of options really quickly. Or with the Indomitus box, where they gave you buttloads of miniatures, all for a discounted price. But here we're kind of getting the worst of both worlds. We're getting monopose models for an expensive price, and I really don't like it. Similarly to the Chaos Cultists, we have another monopose blues model, and that comes in the new boys. Orc boys, to be specific. We first saw these models in the Comet Patrol Orcs, and they're wonderful models. They look great, they have great dynamic poses, but these are actually more frustrating than the Chaos Cultists because regular old squads of Orc boys actually have lots of different options. You can take any one of those boys as either a Slug-a-Boy or a Chop-a-Boy. They can either be holding a big gun or they can be holding a sword and a pistol. But this box doesn't allow you to do that. It always comes with 5 Chop-a-Boys and 3 Slug-a-Boys. It does come with a little bit of modularity on the knob and the gunner. The gunner can take either the big shooter or the rocket launcher, and the knob can have a big chopper or a power claw. But that's not really enough. You can't sell a product that doesn't contain all of the different components that you can take in-game. And Games Workshop seems to agree with that idea because they actually haven't taken the old Orc Boys box off of the web store. So this box is, I guess, just a nice to have because it has some really nice looking orcs. But really, if you want orcs and you want the options that you need for the game, you're gonna need to go back to that old 25-year-old orc kit. Unlike the Chaos Cultists, which I think are the Chaos Cultists we're gonna get, I have a suspicion that these boys are not gonna be the new Orc boys that we get. Similarly to Imperial Guard, who got an upgrade sprue to have a little bit better looking guns and head options for also a 25-year-old plastic kit, they recently got shown off some brand new plastics that look incredible, and so I would bet that we now have boys, we have Orc boys, and we're gonna get a new Orc boy box that has all of the options in the box that you can take in the game, and it'll replace both the super old boys and the current boys box. And speaking of boys, we also have some Space Marine boys in the Space Marine Suppressors. Along the same lines as the Orc boys, who confusingly came out in different ways and are now available to buy separately, these guys came out a bunch of different ways and are not available to buy separately. Space Marine Suppressors can currently only be purchased in the Space Marine Combat Patrol. Previously, they were only available in the Vanguard Space Marine Star Collecting, and originally they came out in the doubles box Space Marines vs. Chaos Space Marines in Shadow Spear. And what's confusing is these models, these monopose frames, keep getting shuffled from product to product, but have never been available to buy separately. And also confusingly, it's a 3 model unit, but there's actually only 2 sculpts. There's a sergeant and just a normal guy, and then a perfect replica of that same normal guy. And so it seems like Games Workshop hasn't put a lot of focus or attention into this one particular unit, and they don't even make it available for you to buy separately. If you don't want to get Comet Patrol Space Marines, but you want them, you have to go find somebody who broke apart the box and sold it on eBay, which is what I did. But that's not good enough. If people want to buy Space Marine Suppressors, they should be able to buy Space Marine Suppressors. And you should be able to buy Space Marine Suppressors that aren't just one guy and then 2 clones. You should be able to get 3 unique guys. But currently, and it doesn't seem like in the future, there's anything that's pointing us towards that these models will be available separately. It's a very weird thing. Games Workshop has been pretty on the ball with getting everybody the Primaris goodness they want, but not when it comes to the Space Marine Suppressors. And speaking of things that are confusing, my last pick for Games Workshop models that kind of missed the mark in a lot of different ways, we have the Necron Royal Court. This box has the problems that I have mentioned on all of these unfavorable model lists. They are monopose, they were available previously in a box but are now somewhat available separately, and I have a little bit of a theory on what these guys are meant to be. So in this box, we have a Skorpek Lord, a Canoptek Reanimator, a Plasmancer, which is a type of Cryptek, and 2 Cryptothralls. These sprues were originally available in Indomitus, but they have taken just a chunk of those sprues, and made them available in this box, which is the Necron Royal Cart. And it doesn't make any sense at all. You have a Destroyer Lord, 1 random Cryptek, 2 Cryptothralls, and the Reanimator. And the Reanimator is really a buffing agent for regular troopers. The Cryptek is meant to go in an actual Royal Court alongside things like your Necron Lords. The Destroyer Lord is meant to be with Destroyers, and maybe even some Flayed ones to help buff their close combat. And I don't even know what the Cryptothralls are used for. Usually they're just purchased because they're a really, really cheap unit that you can use to help get your army coherent. I think Games Workshop worked themselves into a corner with these models because this is 4 very different units shoved into a box together. And I think Games Workshop did such a good job with Indominus, promoting that box, getting it in the hands of every single person who wanted them. It was also a deep discount, so it flooded the secondhand market with these models. I think that Games Workshop took away all of their incentive to do a good job with releasing all 4 of these units separately. It takes a ton of work to take these miniatures, design them, put them in a box, get them out to stores and customers, and the initial reveal of these models is when people are excited and trying to buy them. Now, it's been years. Pretty much everybody who wanted these models already has them. And if you weren't one of those initial purchasers of Indominus, you still probably purchased the 1 or 2 of these units you wanted on eBay for a deep discount because of scalpers. So there's not a huge amount of value in taking the time to promote and sell the Necron Reanimator by itself. Or a squad of 2, or maybe they would put 3 in a box of Cryptothralls. I think that Games Workshop has kind of lost out on the incentive, on the big excitement of these units. And so they've kind of just tucked them in a corner and said, we do sell them because they're in the codex, they are available in the game, but we don't necessarily want to break these up and sell them individually because it might even lose them money because it's 4 units, so that's 4 boxes. That's 4 articles on Warhammer Community. That's 4 weeks of releases for Games Workshop. And they probably don't want to waste their time on these old Necron units they've already shown off and have been selling for years when they can come out with Leagues of Votann or some other new cool things. Maybe a Genestealer Cult Limo. I think that Games Workshop, just through their own style of releases, has kind of ruined the value of the Necron Royal Court. Those are the 5 models that I think Games Workshop did a really bad job on. Again, not bad models by any stretch, but confusing in their release or their options. Overall, it actually took me a really long time to find 5 models that I thought were flawed in some way. Games Workshop really, for the most part, has been knocking it out of the ballpark. Goody on ya, Games Workshop, well done. Games Workshop certainly comes out with a lot of miniatures, but you know who else comes out with a lot of miniatures? That's right, us. Over there, we have tons of STLs ready to populate your wargaming tables, both miniatures and terrain. This month, we have the Lord Acolyte and a whole bunch of Dawn of War-inspired Chaos terrain. Also, if you sign up, there's a welcome pack that includes a lot more terrain inspired by Dawn of War, including Space Marine, Imperial Guard, and Eldar stuff, all hosted by Comics, Games, and Things. We make 1 extra episode of Eons of Battle every single week where we take a look at our viewers' models and give them some helpful critiques on how to improve on their painting, and we have a weekly live Discord hangout where we all hop into a room and chit-chat the night away, usually while I'm working on putting together some Space Marines. We also have merch, link in the description. I love a good Games Workshop mini, but you know what? I also love all minis, and there's tons of great games out there, like Malifaux by Weird or Dead Zone by Mantic. There is definitely no limit to the wonderful plastic goodness out there in the hobby sphere. Thanks for watching.